She never needed to shout to be heard. This is Sade Adu, the woman behind one of the most elegant voices in music history. With hits like Smooth Operator and No Ordinary Love, she showed that a soft, velvety, almost whispered voice could be more powerful than shouting ever could. And unlike so many pop stars, Sade never followed any trend. She created her own style, on her own terms, and always made it clear that it was not a persona. It was simply who she was. But behind the beauty and elegance lay a difficult marriage, legal troubles, and years away from the spotlight. So why did such a major star choose to step away? That is the story I want to tell you today. Sade was born Helen Folashade Adu on January 16, 1959 in Ibadan, Nigeria. The daughter of a Nigerian economics professor and an English nurse, she spent the first 4 years of her life in her native country before her parents separated. She then moved to England with her mother and brother. Sade grew up in Essex and developed an interest in fashion and music. She listened to a lot of American soul and fell in love with artists like Curtis Mayfield, Donny Hathaway, and Bill Withers. These were voices that did not need to shout to move people, singers who seemed to be speaking directly to those listening. That calmer, deeper, and more intimate way of singing would later become a defining feature of Sade's own voice. There is one memory from her youth that has stayed with her to this day. Sade saw the Jackson 5 perform at the Rainbow Theatre in London, the same theatre where she worked weekends behind the bar. But the show itself was not what stayed with her most. She would say, "I was more fascinated by the audience than by anything that was going on the stage. They'd attracted kids, mothers with children, old people, white, black. I was really moved. That's the audience I've always aimed for." Even so, music was still not her main plan. Sade studied fashion design at one of England's most respected art schools. She wanted to build a career, gain independence, and create a stable life for herself. She designed clothes and even joined a group of young designers who traveled to New York with Spandau Ballet for one of the band's performances. Shortly afterward, she opened her own boutique in London, where she modeled the clothes herself. Fashion truly seemed to be the natural path for her. Sade had presence, elegance, and a distinctive beauty that stood apart from the faces typically seen on magazine covers at the time. But music entered her life almost without warning. A friend who played in a band called Pride needed 2 backing vocalists for a concert, and Sade agreed to give it a try, despite having no experience or formal vocal training. But little by little, she proved to be a remarkably strong performer and eventually overshadowed the lead singer, reshaping the band around her distinctive style. It was during this period that she grew close to saxophonist and guitarist Stuart Matthewman, keyboardist Andrew Hale, bassist Paul Denman, and drummer Paul Anthony Cook, musicians who would later help turn that shy singer into an international star. During the shows, there was a moment when she stepped to the front with this group of musicians. While the rest of the band played more energetic music, they brought something different. Slower songs infused with jazz and soul, and a distinctly late-night mood. And that was when everything changed. The audience paid attention. Sade did not try to imitate the great soul divas. She did not rely on belting, overdo the high notes, or feel the need to showcase her power all the time. She simply sang, and that was enough. It felt as though the entire room slowed down just to listen to her. It was during this period that the first version of Smooth Operator began to take shape. The song introduces a character perfectly suited to Sade's world, an elegant, seductive, and dangerous man. Someone who moves through major streets, knows how to use his charm, and always seems to be in control. But behind his sophisticated appearance lies a certain coldness. This was the song that caught the attention of record label scouts. They began looking for Sade, but they wanted only her, not Pride. Sade refused, and for about a year and a half, she turned down offers. She did not want to leave behind the people who were building everything with her. From the beginning, she knew that her music was not a solo project. It was the result of a group. In the end, Sade agreed to sign with Epic Records in 1983. But she brought Stuart Matthewman, Paul Denman, and Paul Anthony Cook with her. It would not be just Sade Adu. It would be Sade. They did not know it yet, but they were about to release an album that would change their lives. And within a few months, the world would come to know that woman with the soft voice, serious gaze, and unforgettable presence. In July 1984, Sade released her debut album, Diamond Life. The record was made in just 6 weeks and already presented the image the public would come to associate with her: elegance, sophistication, and music made for urban nights. Your Love Is King entered the UK Top 10 in early 1984. Then came Smooth Operator, Hang On to Your Love, and When Am I Going to Make a Living? Suddenly, the singer who had once been afraid to take the stage was on magazine covers. Her face, her ponytail, her large earrings, and her clothes came to represent a new idea of style. But Sade never saw any of it as a persona created to sell records. She said, "It wasn't marketing, it was just me, and I wasn't trying to promote an image." For the rest of the 1980s, the band toured almost non-stop. Sade believed that performing live was the only way to know whether people truly felt those songs. She explained it simply. When she stepped onto the stage with the musicians, she could tell that the audience genuinely loved the music. In 1985, the second album, Promise, brought the songs The Sweetest Taboo, Is It a Crime, and Never As Good as the First Time. Promise reached the top of the charts in both the United Kingdom and the United States. And for the following year, Sade won the Grammy Award for Best New Artist. It was a huge achievement for a band that had been playing small London clubs just a few years earlier. In July 1985, Sade also took the stage at Live Aid at Wembley Stadium in London. It was one of the biggest musical events of the time, organized to raise funds for famine relief in Ethiopia. To many people, that moment seemed like the peak of a perfect story. But for Sade, fame was also beginning to show its darker side. She did not like being followed by photographers. She did not enjoy parties filled with celebrities, and she did not like talking about her personal life. She began giving fewer and fewer interviews because she felt that many journalists were making up stories about her. After that, Sade began walking through the streets trying not to attract attention. She wore scarves and dark glasses and lowered her head whenever someone recognized her. While trying to protect herself from that side of fame, she continued working on what would become her third album. In 1988, Stronger Than Pride was released. This time, Sade took charge of producing the record. It was another important step. She was not just the voice and face of the band, she also wanted creative control over her music. The album included songs such as Love Is Stronger Than Pride and Paradise. From the outside, Sade seemed increasingly confident, but away from the stage, her life was becoming more complicated. In the late 1980s, she fell in love with Spanish director Carlos Scola Pliego. In 1989, they got married and moved to Madrid, but the relationship became strained. Apparently, Carlos struggled with Sade's fame and professional commitments, and everything eventually fell apart. Sade rarely spoke about her private life, but when she finally opened up about the separation years later, she described the 1990 divorce as very sad. She revealed that she had been forced to leave the home they shared in Spain abruptly, with only a very small suitcase. She also said it took 5 years before she could wake up without feeling that pain. To Sade, getting over someone you truly love too quickly would not be a victory. It would be like pretending that love had never existed. When she returned to England, other problems arose. The house she bought in North London began to develop structural issues. The floors were sagging, and she had to move out for about a year and a half while the house was repaired. At the same time, a family member became seriously ill, and Sade helped her mother care for them. It was during this difficult period that Sade created Love Deluxe, released in 1992. The album was deeper and more emotional than the previous ones. Its standout track was No Ordinary Love. The song is about loving someone deeply, giving everything you have, and still feeling that the love was not returned in the same way. The album also included Kiss of Life, Cherish the Day, Feel No Pain, and Pearls, one of the hardest-hitting tracks on Love Deluxe. In it, Sade tells the story of a woman struggling to survive in Somalia amid famine and civil war. Love Deluxe showed that Sade did not sing only about beautiful love stories. She also knew how to sing about loss, fear, loneliness, and the strength needed to keep going. But that success extended far beyond the studio. The year before, it had led to a major tour, during which Sade firmly established her visual identity. With her background in fashion design, she was her own art director. And while she favored a timeless minimalism off stage, she made a surprising choice for this tour. She embraced theatricality. Alongside director Gioia Meller-Markovits, she created the iconic Suit of Light. Hand-sewn and covered with hundreds of tiny mirrored stones, the outfit weighed around 7 pounds. As she moved beneath the spotlights, reflections shimmered across the entire arena, keeping her velvety voice flawless while carrying all that weight under the heat of the lights required absolute control. It made her stage presence seem almost mythical, but all that brilliance came at a high price. By then, Sade had released 4 albums that sold millions of copies, created songs that would become timeless, and carved out a place in music that few others could occupy. But the greater her fame became, the more she wanted to disappear for a while. And after Love Deluxe, she felt that she needed to step away. Before we continue, consider becoming a member of SADE'S. As a member, you get access to exclusive perks, help the channel produce more documentaries, invest even more in quality, and bring member-only projects to life. And all of that for a very affordable price. Support SADE'S and be part of this next chapter of the channel. Sade had gone through a difficult divorce, problems with her house, the pressures of fame, and years of touring. On the outside, she was still one of the most admired artists in the world. On the inside, all she wanted was silence. In the mid-1990s, Sade left England and moved to the Caribbean. In Jamaica, Sade began a relationship with her music producer, Bob Morgan. And on July 21st, 1996, she became a mother, something that would change her priorities forever. From then on, she wanted to be present. She wanted a simple routine, caring for her child, cooking, and sleeping in her own bed. But the peace she was looking for in Jamaica did not last long. In February 1997, Sade was involved in an incident with police in Montego Bay. According to the authorities' version, she ignored an order to stop her car and was charged with dangerous driving, failing to obey a police officer, and disorderly conduct. Sade, however, told a very different story. She said that a police officer had recognized her and allegedly tried to get money from her, and that the problems began after she refused to pay. To Sade, none of it made any sense. The case attracted media attention and became yet another situation in which she felt exposed and judged. The experience with the police was the final straw. On top of that, her relationship with Bob Morgan came to an end. Disillusioned with life on the island and determined to protect her privacy, Sade packed her bags and returned to England, where she faced life as a single mother. Once again, she chose to withdraw from public life. Between 1992 and 2000, Sade did not release any new albums. To the music industry, that seemed like a huge risk. Many artists were afraid of being out of the spotlight for even a few months. Sade stayed away for years, and because she did not explain her life to the press, rumors began to spread. Some people said she had stage fright, but the truth was simpler. Sade was just living her life. She never wanted to become a brand that had to release something new every year. She needed to feel that she had something genuine to say. And in November 2000, after 8 years, Sade returned with Lovers Rock. The title comes from Lovers Rock, a romantic style of reggae that emerged in England, a clear reflection of the years she spent immersed in Caribbean music. This album reveals a more mature Sade, broadening her themes beyond love to explore motherhood, loss, injustice, and resilience. By Your Side, for example, is a song about always being there for someone during difficult times. Immigrant addresses the prejudice and hardships faced by immigrants, and Slave Song explores the pain of slavery.
God leave you down when you're down on your knees.
But as soon as she returned, she began to withdraw once again. After the tour and the live album Lovers Live, Sade once again put her personal life first. She left the bustle of London behind and chose to live in the countryside in southwest England. Surrounded by trees, fields, and animals, she embraced a simpler routine and found the kind of anonymity she had always been searching for. In 2007, Sade met Ian Watts. He had been a Royal Marine and a firefighter before taking other paths in life. He was not a celebrity, he was not interested in the party scene, and he did not seem eager to appear beside her on magazine covers. He was exactly the kind of man Sade had been looking for. She once joked that she had always imagined finding a man who knew how to chop wood and had a beautiful smile. She simply said, "I feel like I won the lottery." With him, her daughter, her mother, and a family growing away from the cameras, Sade built a quieter life. In the years that followed, she continued writing songs at her own pace. The band members no longer all lived in the same city, as they had in the beginning. Each one of them had their own life, their own projects, and their own routine. As a result, making an album became an even slower process. And just as the world was beginning to wonder whether she would ever return, Sade was preparing to open a new chapter in her story. In 2010, after 10 years without releasing a studio album, Sade returned with Soldier of Love. It was a different kind of record. The title track had a stronger, almost military beat, and told the story of someone who had suffered but still had not given up on love. The album also featured songs such as Baby Father, The Moon and the Sky, and Long Hard Road.
There's something that you need to know.
The comeback was a major success. Soldier of Love earned the band another Grammy in 2011, and the tour that followed showed that audiences had been waiting for her, even after so many years of silence. But once it was over, Sade stepped away from public life again. Away from music, Sade continued to protect what she had always considered most important, her family. In 2016, her son, Isaac Theo Adu, publicly came out as a trans man. For many families, moments like this can bring fear, distance, and rejection. But Sade chose to stand by him. Isaac has spoken publicly about his mother's support. In a message to her, he thanked Sade for standing by him through some of the most difficult moments of his life. Years later, he described their bond in even more powerful words. "My mom has never tried to oppress the boy I silently always knew I was. She always let me be me." In 2024, Sade channeled that feeling into music. She released Young Lion, a song dedicated to Isaac, as part of Transa, a project created to celebrate trans and non-binary artists and their stories. In the song, Sade reflects on the past through just a few words, but they carry tremendous weight. "Forgive me, son, I should have known." It was not a song meant to be played everywhere. It was a letter from a mother to her son. The music video brings together home footage from Isaac's childhood and ends with Sade embracing him. It was her way of showing the world something she almost never reveals, a glimpse into her private life. After so many years apart, Sade and the band reunited at Miraval Studios in the south of France, where they had previously recorded parts of Promise and Stronger Than Pride. It was there that they began working on new music. So far, Sade has not announced a release date, revealed the album's title, or made any grand promises, but the possibility of a new record is still in the air. And knowing her story, when she does return, it will not simply be to release new music. It will be because she has something genuine to say. So, did you enjoy learning about Sade's story? Do you know any interesting details about Sade that we did not include here? Share them in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back very soon with another great story from the world of music.